Okay, we are going to play around with a couple of different chart types in Data Studio. So what I want to do is look at a couple of different ways of visualizing channel data coming from Google Analytics. So I'm gonna start with a time series chart, and make this a little bigger. Right now it's on new users. I don't really like the new users metric, just because Google Analytics isn't actually very good at measuring new users. So I'm going to switch this to sessions. So now what this is showing me is sessions by day over the default date range. So one of the things that we can do with this report that's really handy is adding a breakdown dimension, and that's where I'm going to add the default channel grouping as a breakdown dimension. So now we've got it's showing trends for each of these. And I find this a little bit hard to interpret. So let's have a look at what a couple of our other options are. If I click on this chart, I can go to Style, and then I can look at the chart type, and I could pick like a column chart. And now it's a bit confusing to look at because it's going by day. So I'm going to actually change my key dimension to the default channel grouping, so I'm not actually seeing it trended over time, but in a way this is kind of what I want, is to see this breakdown, is to get a feeling for traffic coming from different channels. If you're somebody who likes pie charts, you could argue this is an okay use of a pie chart. I'm not a big fan, just because I think once you get to more than like three different categories of a dimension, it gets really hard to understand. Sorry, click on this, switch to a pie chart, and then of course we have a donut chart, which is just a pie chart in disguise. I mean, that's okay. I actually don't mind that. It's not a bad way to visualize the data. Another type that I use a lot, and this is a little bit different. So this is going to be less useful for viewing channels, but I still think it's really handy, are these little scorecard metrics. And so what this is showing me is overall sessions for the time period. And a lot of times when I'm doing a report, well, first let's do a couple things with this. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to, on my for my scorecard, I'm going to have this be the previous period. So now you see below it, now it's starting to compare to the previous period. Another thing, I don't know why they don't do this by default. It's left justified. I'm going to switch this to center justified. And then I can just copy this a few times if I wanted to get a couple different metrics. I'm going to switch back to data. Here I'm going to say goal conversion rate, and doesn't quite fit, so I'm going to drag that over. And then maybe for the last scorecard, we could just say bounce rate or something. So just giving a feeling for how metrics are moving. So sessions are down a little bit for the time period. Goal conversion rate is down a little bit for the time period, and you can see 17.2%. I love those scorecard widgets. I think adding them when you're reporting on other data can be super handy. So then I'm going to I'll show you one other chart type, but I recommend that you go in here and you play around with your options. And the one that I like to use a fair amount is this stacked area chart to see trending over time. So now we've got our channels up here. We've got our stacked area chart, and then another thing that I'll often do when I'm showing data on a chart is I might have a table next to it that reports on, gives me those metrics, and then in this table I can go ahead and add different dimensions if I want to provide more detail. In this case, because I've got my scorecards, maybe it gets a little bit hard to read, but for now, one thing I'll show you with tables, just because it's sort of handy, is if you go down here, a lot of times you don't actually care about row numbers, and you can save a little bit of space on your table. So I'm going to drag this over here, and I'm going to make this nice and tall. I could actually pull these under here. And I can make this, drag this over, and voila. So again, just go and experiment with different chart types. I mean, you will find sometimes that you have to play around with the dimensions and metrics you're using, because some chart types really work best with a single metric. Other ones are fine with multiple metrics. And you do have a lot of chart types to choose from. So have at it, play around.